Imagine a weapon that leaves no trace, a gun that fires a bullet made of ice and shellfish toxin. It enters the body, melts instantly, and causes a heart attack that looks completely natural. The perfect crime. This wasn't a fantasy, this was real. In 1975, the United States Senate displayed this heart attack gun to the world. It was created by the CIA. But here is the terrifying part. The gun was the least of their secrets. While the world was afraid of nuclear bombs during the Cold War, the American government was fighting a much darker war, a war for the human mind. They wanted to know if they could reprogram a human being like a computer. Could they create a sleeper agent? Could they wipe a person's memory, or drive them insane on purpose? To answer these questions, they launched the most illegal and immoral program in American history, Project MKUltra. This is the story of how the government kidnapped, drugged, and tortured its own citizens, all in the name of national security. To understand MKUltra, we have to go back to the end of World War II. The United States defeated the Nazis, but they didn't want the Nazi scientific secrets to fall into Soviet hands. So, under a top-secret program called Operation Paperclip, the U.S. government secretly brought Nazi scientists to America. These weren't just rocket scientists. Some of them were doctors who had experimented on prisoners in concentration camps. They brought with them dark knowledge about breaking the human will using mescaline and torture. By 1953, the Cold War was freezing over. The CIA was panicked. American prisoners of war in Korea were coming home, appearing brainwashed, confessing to crimes they didn't commit. CIA Director Allen Dulles became obsessed. He believed the Soviets had mastered mind control. He ordered the CIA to catch up, no matter the cost. Allen Dulles needed someone to run this new, top-secret division. He didn't choose a typical soldier. He chose a man named Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb was a contradiction. He lived in a remote cabin without running water. He milked his own goats. He studied Buddhism, and he taught folk dancing. But at work, he was known as the poisoner-in-chief. Gottlieb was given a license to kill. His goal was to find a chemical that could shatter the human mind. He experimented with cocaine, heroin, and mescaline, but then he found his holy grail. A new, synthetic drug called LSD. Gottlieb believed LSD was the key to unlocking the brain, but to prove it, he needed test subjects. And since the experiments were dangerous and often deadly, he couldn't ask for volunteers. He had to steal them. This leads us to Operation Midnight Climax. It sounds like the title of a cheap spy movie, but Operation Midnight Climax was very real. In San Francisco and New York, the CIA set up fake apartments. They looked like normal bachelor pads, but the walls were lined with microphones and two-way mirrors. The CIA put George White, a narcotics officer, in charge. He hired prostitutes and put them on the government payroll. Their instructions were simple: lure unsuspecting men back to the apartment. Once inside, the men were unknowingly given drinks spiked with massive doses of LSD. Behind the mirrors, CIA agents sat on portable toilets, drinking martinis and recording the madness. They watched as regular citizens, accountants, construction workers, and fathers lost their minds. They specifically targeted men who wouldn't go to the police. If you were lured by a prostitute, you weren't going to tell your wife or the cops what happened. It was the perfect trap. One victim ran into the street screaming that monsters were chasing him. Others fell into deep psychosis. The CIA simply took notes and moved on to the next victim. But the experiments weren't limited to safe houses. There is evidence that Gottlieb took his tests into the real world. In 1951, in the quiet French village of Pont-Saint-Esprit, a mysterious madness struck. Hundreds of people suddenly went insane on the same day. Men tried to drown themselves. A boy tried to strangle his mother. One man screamed that he was a plane and jumped out of a second-story window, breaking his legs. Yet he stood up and continued to run. 7 people died. 50 were sent to asylums. For decades, it was blamed on cursed bread or moldy flour. But later investigations revealed documents suggesting the CIA had sprayed the area with an aerosol version of LSD to see if they could cause mass hysteria in a population. They treated an entire town like lab rats. Sidney Gottlieb was reckless. In November 1953, he decided to test the drugs on his own colleagues. He invited a group of CIA and Army scientists to a cabin retreat in Maryland. Among them was Frank Olson, a brilliant bacteriologist and a family man. After dinner, Gottlieb secretly spiked the liqueur bottles with LSD. He didn't tell the men until they had already finished their drinks. The room descended into chaos. Most of the men recovered, but Frank Olson did not. Frank entered a dark, paranoid spiral. He believed the CIA was trying to kill him. He called his wife, terrified, telling her he had made a terrible mistake. The CIA saw him as a liability. They took him to New York City, ostensibly for psychiatric help. They checked him into room 1018 of the Statler Hotel. At 2:30 a.m., Frank Olson went through the closed window. He fell 13 stories to his death. The CIA told his family it was a suicide due to job stress. They covered it up for 22 years. It wasn't until 1975 that his family learned the truth about the drugs. And in 1994, when his body was exhumed, a forensic team found a hematoma on his temple, suggesting he might have been knocked unconscious before being thrown out the window. The question remains, did Frank jump, or was he pushed to keep the secret? If you think the safe houses were bad, what happened in Canada was worse. The CIA began funding Dr. Ewan Cameron at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Dr. Cameron wasn't just testing drugs, he was trying to depattern the mind. He wanted to wipe a brain clean and program new information into it. His patients were not spies. They were regular people seeking help for anxiety or postpartum depression. Cameron put them into drug-induced comas for weeks or even months. He played tape loops of repetitive messages under their pillows for 16 hours a day. He used electroshock therapy at 30 to 40 times the normal intensity. When these patients woke up, they were broken. They had forgotten their families, their names, and even how to use a toilet. They were reduced to the mental state of infants. The CIA paid for all of it, hiding the funding behind a shell organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. The ripples of MKUltra reached further than anyone realized. In the late 1950s, at Harvard University, a young, brilliant 16-year-old student named Ted Kaczynski volunteered for a psychological study. He didn't know it was funded by the CIA. For 3 years, Kaczynski was subjected to brutal psychological abuse, designed to break his ego and humiliate him, while his reactions were recorded. The experiment destroyed him. He became withdrawn and developed a hatred for modern technology and control. Years later, Ted Kaczynski would become the Unabomber, sending bombs through the mail to universities and airlines, killing 3 people and injuring 23. While we cannot say the experiment alone created the Unabomber, it is a chilling fact that the man who terrorized America for decades was, in part, a product of the government's own psychological warfare. By the early 1970s, the darkness was coming to light. The Watergate scandal made Americans suspicious of their government. CIA Director Richard Helms saw the writing on the wall. In 1973, in a final act of panic, Helms ordered all MKUltra files to be destroyed. 7 boxes of financial records survived by mistake, misfiled in a separate warehouse. That is the only reason we know any of this today. When the Senate investigated in 1975, the CIA admitted to the program but claimed it was necessary for the Cold War. But because the files were destroyed, we will never know the full body count. We don't know how many people died in safe houses, how many were institutionalized, or how many are still out there, living with broken minds. Project MKUltra proved one thing. When a government operates in the shadows without accountability, the citizens become the enemy. If they could do this with LSD in the 1950s, imagine what they can do with the technology they have today. Thanks for watching. If you want to explore more dark secrets of history, make sure to subscribe. Sleep well.